This is Scott Morgan. We're here at Morganics Family Farm. Our farm, we grow small grains. I do lots of different kinds of grain. I do mostly market sales, so I go direct to customers the same way that most growers are doing CSAs with vegetables. So right now we're standing in the rye field that is part of the soil health grant that we're doing with the NOFA New Jersey, NOFA Mass, and NOFA Connecticut. This field hasn't seen tillage in about a year and a half. We started with a winter wheat 2 years back. Last year this just got mowed and taken care of on the surface. So we harvested the winter wheat and then we mowed it all summer long and then planted the rye, which is also a winter grain. So that it grows and survives and develops over the winter time. You can see that not tilling, we've got some perennial weeds coming in, but we've also fostered a lot of clover. So right in front of us is some crimson clover that's coming up. This will all get mowed down. All this stubble will get mowed down with a flail mower here within the next week or so. The flail mower chops everything up into really small pieces, so it's going to leave the ground completely mulched. We'll have 100% soil coverage, and yet everything will be fine enough and in a uniform enough layer that the clover and some of the other stuff that we want to continue to grow will be able to come up through it. It's also fine enough and thin enough that I will be able to drill directly into it, effectively no-till, even though it's a standard soybean special grain drill. I've got it kind of set up for maximum pressure, and I find that I can cut through all that plant residue as long as it's chipped up really fine the way that the flail mower does. So we will drill buckwheat right into this stubble after it's mowed down and get at least 1 round, if not 2 rounds of buckwheat, just to keep nutrients cycling and up near the surface on all this. And then as we get closer to winter, I'll make a decision whether to plant a final round of buckwheat and leave all that residue up at the top, or whether I'll just leave it alone and try to get in here nice and early with some oats next spring. If it's looking nice and clean and the buckwheat's done its job to keep the grasses under control, then what we're going to do is we're going to do our 3rd year on this grant with no-tilled oats into this as early as we can in the spring. Do you want to see how that grain's drying that we harvested the other day? Come on in. So this fan right here is pulling air. It's creating suction. The bags that are right over here have about 7,000 pounds of wheat. And this has not been run through the cleaner yet, but this is the wheat. It's still got some trash in there that we're going to sort out. But you can feel, if you put your hand on it, just a gentle, constant flow of air being pulled down into the grain. And that's enough to bring the moisture down. When it came out of the field, it was about 17.5, almost 18%. And now we've got it just under 17, almost 16.5. We've got a few more points to go. Once we get to about 14 or 13.9, we're safe to store it just closed up in the bag for the rest of the year. It'll be stable. This is the moisture tester. So I just take a big scoop of grain from the bin, set it on there. You fill it, strike it clean, and then in a couple of seconds it'll tell us how much moisture is in there. Ooh, 11.9. So we would definitely do that a couple, 3 or 4 more times from all the bags just to make sure that it's that low. But because we've had such low humidity and a nice airflow through the barn, this has dropped several points, so faster than I thought, because yesterday it was about 16.5 and now it's reading under 12. So if I get several more tests like that during the day, it's good. It's good to close up and store.
Look at that einkorn. I smell big bucks. Oh, really?
Yeah, I smell it, Tom.
Well, I'm glad you do, because Elizabeth, you got to get them for me.
I know.
I'm happy to share them with you.
No, no.
You got to get them for me.
No, no. No, mine is all the thrill of the chase.
These days, anything even with bucks at all is great.
The amazing moments when farmers actually reach good profitability on a crop. That's what I live for.
That would be nice. Tom Zeng. Been farming since 1977 as an adult.
And so you have what we call a split operation, right? You have how many acres are in conventional versus organic?
Well, there's a little fewer organic than there used to be. There's about 250 acres, I think, is organic. We cut back a little because a distant farm, organics require a lot more intensive management sometimes, and that was too far away to handle. And we just said, okay, you know, when you get things like rain or something that changes what you have to do the next day or the next week, that was too far away because we were all down here. So we don't do that one that way anymore.
So what grain crops do you grow?
And I grow, let's see. Well, of course, 4 acres of emmer, or not emmer, einkorn. You're talking about emmer. Let's see, what else do I grow? Wheat, oats, barley. No, I didn't grow any barley this year. I take that back. Wheat, oats, rye.
Corn?
Oh, yes. Corn and soybeans are my main ones. Corn, soybeans. We grow sunflowers, sorghum. Organically, there is rye, oats, wheat, and corn. I don't grow organic soybeans because we have such a severe deer problem. They would wipe it. They've wiped out more than 100% of the crop. I can show them how a combine works here. Combine works like this. Cut the head off. Roll it in between 2 surfaces. Blow off the excess. And that's what you got, is the grain.
So the reason that it's called a combine is because it does 2 things in one machine.
Yes. Combination reaper, thresher.
It cuts it and then it threshes it. This was such a big, you've all seen the medieval pictures of people with a hand threshing grain. That required hours and hours of work. So when the combine came along, much later, of course, sometimes young folks who are just getting into grain production, they don't have a strong farming background, they're often resistant. They say, I want to scythe it, I want to do it by hand. To do this 2 acres of grain by hand, nobody makes it through that.
A professional with a scythe, of which there are none anymore.
Yeah.
It would take a minimum of 2 days.
Well, I think
just to cut it. That's not binding it. That's not threshing it.
So, for example, my father, who was born in 1908,
he could do it
in the old country. he knew how to scythe.
Yes.
But did he want to scythe? No.
So
the combine is a wonderful thing, and the great thing about combines is, can you spend a fortune on a combine? Yes. Do you have to spend a fortune? No. You're going to see Tom's, which is
spend small fortunes.
Small fortunes.
But that means you're probably a small user. But that's okay.
So you're going to see a self-propelled combine over there, but they're also pull-behind combines.
Yeah, there's still some of them around.
Yeah, and they can be purchased. They have to be purchased used.
Yep.
And I recommend people purchase used combines, but
and you probably have to make your own parts.
Well,
not always, but
this AC all crop, there actually is a part manufacturer in Pennsylvania.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah,
there still was a lot around.
Yeah, so so people are often intimidated by a combine, but for grain production of any, for commercial grain production, it's the, wouldn't you say, it's the essential tool.
If you don't have one, you shouldn't do it.
You shouldn't do it. You can. They're custom combiners.
Oh yes.
And you
get your neighbor. Absolutely. That's actually, before you buy one, if you can get a neighbor to do it, that is the best route to go. But you have reliability is something you got to consider.
Yeah. The problem with small grains is they all tend to come at once, and so that's the difficulty in asking a neighbor. But it does work. And it's also important too, if you're going to buy a used combine, to get expert advice on what to look for in a used combine, because if you get something that's essentially junk, it's just going to waste your money. So OGRIN, my organization, that's one of the things I do, is I'll help connect you with people that are dotted around the countryside, who mentors who can give you some really good tips. But the other thing about this crop, of course, this is a very rare crop. This is einkorn. It's a very ancient grain. It's one of the earliest ones that was under cultivation, so 10,000, 14,000 years ago. This started to be cultivated. It's a diploid grain rather than the hexaploid, which is our modern wheat. Keep in mind that when we say modern wheat, that came under cultivation 8,000 years ago.
But diploid means it's 2-row.
No, it means it's 2 chromosome.
Ah.
So
this is
2
only
sets.
2-row as well.
Yeah. So this is different from wheat. It's in the same genus. It's a triticum, so it's related, but it's not the same species. And this happens to be a variety called Milky Way. It was named by Henry Byler, who also sells einkorn seed. But this originally I collected some of this from the USDA Germplasm Bank, which is a wonderful, wonderful resource. It's all free to U.S. citizens and researchers and farmers. And so I think this one originated in Bosnia-Herzegovina. That's where it was collected. There are several great things about growing einkorn. One, there's no copyright. Nobody owns it. It's an ancient wheat. It's in the public domain. So you buy the seed, you can raise it, you can sell it, you can do whatever you want with it. This is a winter. This was planted
in the fall.
In October, probably.
October.
Usually
October 31st.
Yeah. And so it overwinters, and then it's ready to harvest in July, late July.
This was probably ready maybe a week ago, but we had rain, so delayed it.
So you can also plant einkorn in the spring, and the interesting thing about einkorn is it's facultative. Every variety we've checked so far can be grown in the winter or the spring. That's very rare. Yeah. Usually you have varieties that have to be planted in the winter, and then there are those that are planted in the spring. So it's very versatile. You can now, as I say, there are sources of commercial seed that you can buy, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, whatever you want. And then one more thing about this. You can see that it's lodged. It's started to fall over. And one of the things that we looked for in a variety was a strong stem to reduce lodging. This is
not severe lodge. I can get under that without any trouble.
Yeah, I'm sure he.
But we in spots we did, and but when we had showers, they were showers with very high winds, enough that you wondered if they were going to break the windows and stuff. It was bad. But then that's what lodges. In fact, it wasn't the first one. It was the one that came later. So it really got hammered, and I thought it might be flat on the ground. And most places it wasn't. There's just a couple places. But that was because it was where I had too much manure. So.
And then you'll notice that when he broke that up to simulate what the combine does, those kernels are still in their hulls.
Yeah.
So most of the kernels that go through the combine will come out still in their hulls. This is an example of hulled wheat. The hulls are held very hard on the kernels. Modern wheat, no problem, except for some varieties it can be a little difficult, but they freely lose their hulls in the combine. And so that's a downside for einkorn, in that then you have another processing step called dehulling. Fortunately, we now have small scale, very efficient, cheap dehullers that do einkorn. But anyway, this is he's done a wonderful job.
Mother Nature did wonderful. All I did was put the seed in the ground. You can't grow organic or any small grain on small grain on small grain.
Wonderful.
Not here. You just can't do that. And rotation is very important. You'll have all kinds of disease problems. And that's something you learn. Well, I learned long before I went organic even. You can, if you're not organic, you can put on a lot more insecticide and things like that to prevent things, and you can grow crop after crop of the same thing for a while. but it is Mother Nature that will just mutate whatever your problem has been, and it's going to come and get you.
So the point that you made, Tom, is it just shows your years of experience and forward thinking, whether you're growing conventionally or organically. That idea of crop rotation. So coming back,
right, and crop rotation, but I do crop rotation non-organically as well.
That's my point.
But it's not as critical. So if I get hit with some weather factor or something that says, hey, you can't do it, well, I have, in a way, a little more flexibility with the non-organic than I do with the organic. So that all impacts it too, and that also impacted whether I should try organic. Is it worth what I thought was more risk? I don't think it's more risk, it's different risk. And you do accept more risk with things like row crops and cultivation when you can't get in there to cultivate because it's been so wet. And what do? And I've had that happen where you lose a crop. And I was sure glad it wasn't hundreds of acres of a crop, but it hurts when you lose 10 or 15 acres of a crop. It's a lot of income. So those are things, that's a risk, because if it wasn't, and it was, for example, I lost some wheat, I lost 10 acres of wheat, 100%, all turned white because of the bugs I got on it. And there was nothing I could do, so I just watched it die. There's nothing you can do. If it was not organic, and if I were to say, okay, forget certifying that for the next 3 years, I'll go in and get it sprayed, I could have saved the crop. Sometimes I decide, not sometimes, all the time, I decide not to. My certified acres, I want to keep them certified and not drop them off.
Because it takes
3 years to get them back.
Right. Let's talk about the importance of, you made a very important point that when you grow small grains organically, they're really good. They're some of the best crops for the soil. But
yes, it's a good rotation crop.
Yeah, but you cannot grow them one after the other. No. You need to, and so the kinds of things that you would grow, you would put in the rotation with your small grains, and the organic rotation would be what other grains?
Any kind of a legume usually fits in well with it. And I don't always get to do all that, but I also like to be sure you've got to feed your crop. I don't care where it comes from. It can come from legumes, preferably in combination with manure and rotation. And manure is very important, I believe, anyway. I've seen much better results with manure than legume cover crops even.
Do you have your own source of manure, or do you have to buy that in?
Both.
Okay.
Do both.
And for other
which is a help, because where I'm buying it from, they need to get rid of it, and the regulations are such that they can't do it all there on their own place. So it works out very well, I think.
Right. And then the thing that, just to broaden the discussion a little bit, one of the reasons that these small grain crops can work for vegetable farmers, is because there's nothing better to rotate your broadleaf vegetable crops out than into a small grain.
Sure. Like a rye. I sell a lot of rye for cover crop organically, and most of it goes to vegetable growers.
And then with the new market for small grains, especially if they're organically grown, that rye can actually be grown as a food crop.
This is the smallest they made in 1980.
Yeah, this is a relatively small.
Or it's small.
Self-propelled.
I don't know if they make them this small today.
I've seen smallers, but
yeah. This was the biggest in 1980.
Yeah, I've seen a John Deere that I think it's a 44 something.
4420 or 4400.
Yeah, you can actually get that on a 16-foot trailer and
you could.
It around.
Yeah, no, I can't. No,
No,
I don't have the test weight scale here. I must have left it in the house.
So this model would have been made how many years ago?
This is 1980.
Okay, and you didn't buy it in 1980, did you?
Bought 96.
Okay, so you bought a used combine. I want to make this point to people because that's one of the fears they have. They think they have to spend $100,000 on a combine.
Oh, well, you could easily spend $100,000 on a combine.
I know, but they're
many of them are a lot more. You couldn't buy. I don't know if you can buy a new one for that anymore.
But I mean a new one. You mean
a new one?
But
right.
The whole point is that farmers.
You could buy used ones. Most used ones of this size, I'm taking a wild guess because I'm not even looking. Probably $50,000.
Right, and the type that are smaller, the gleaners and the AC.
You can find them. You can find something. Scott has one. I bet you can find it for $1,000, $1,500. I bet you can find some little old self-propel ones for $500. But you really got to look before I start. And check all the fluids. Make sure it's all been greased, and oil the chains. And then you start to run the thing, and then you do all your adjustments.
Okay, and
you got to look in the tank and see how the grain is coming in, how clean or dirty it is, and then you got to check the back, preferably while it's running, and you can see if it's really flying out the back. And then you get behind the machine completely into the windrow where your straw is. You move the straw, and well, I guess officially you should take a grid 1 foot by 1 foot and see how much is there. I haven't done that in years, but visually I go like that and say, okay.
How much what is there?
How many kernels are in a square foot?
You do not want the kernels to be there unless they're bad.
Yeah, you don't mind 1 or 2, but you don't want to see a whole bunch.
Right.
And you don't want to see them flying out the back. And
so what do you do then
well, you have to adjust your air, and you have to adjust your sieve and your concave, which are two screens basically. And so it's a combination between your sieves, chaffers, that's your screens, and the air that's flowing through it. So you have to just get to know that and get it adjusted. And then when you're looking in it also helps when you're looking in the bin. If you're getting a lot of light stuff in there, then you know you need more air. And also when you're sitting in the combine, if you hear a lot of return grain coming from what's called the tailings, it's the stuff that it's heavy, it goes to the back and comes back through to get rethrashed. If you start hearing a lot of that, you know you're getting too much. So you need to adjust for that as well. That usually means adjust your screens. If you're finding grain that's not thrashed out, then either the speed of your cylinder is too slow and you need to speed it up, or vice versa. If you're getting kernels that are chopped up, you've got to slow it down. And or you have to change your clearances between your rotating drum and your concave, your stationary surface.
So correct me if I'm wrong, so if you're getting smushed grain or bits of grain, you would adjust both the speed and or that distance between the concave
and you kind of need to know where you're at. I mean, you might say, oh, I'm way too close, and open it up. And if that still doesn't do it, usually the speed is going to affect it, but not as much as the distance. So how much, when you look in that bin, you say, well, how much am I getting? Am I getting a lot of them broken kernels? Then I better adjust my concave. Is it more or less just fine tuning? Then you probably want to adjust your cylinder speed. But that's all probably. It all depends on weather conditions, crop conditions, and all that. So.
And every crop is different, and every year is different. Is that right?
You know, every crop is different. In a year like this, when it's very hot and dry throughout everything, not a lot of difference.
Okay.
But yeah, between crops is different. Mm-hmm. Oats will require a lot closer setting of your concaves, cutting back your air. Often your screens should be adjusted a little bit.
And as you now have the sum total of 3 acres under your belt of einkorn combine.
Oh, yes.
What so far have you learned about einkorn in comparison to other crops?
It feeds in about like rye, which is not the best. So your ground speed is a little slower, but I'm not sure of that. I'm still fine-tuning my real speed, which is all those fingers and that feeds it in, compared to ground speed. And 2 acres is not much to get your adjustments. So, but I'm not disappointed at all. It's feeding in good. The yield, we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see.
I don't know really what good yield is. I think as far as agronomically, I might have a good yield. Economically, I don't know. That remains to be seen.
Yeah, so just as a rule of thumb at the Snyder Research Farm at Rutgers, we got the maximum yield that we got there was 2,800 pounds per acre, which is a very good, that's in the hull. That's a very good yield for einkorn. So if you're getting close to that, you're doing extremely well.
Well, I don't have my calculator. I don't know how to convert to bushels. Oh, well, I know it's a 30 pound. Oh, it's 30 pounds in a bushel. There's probably 100 and there's probably 100. Well, let's just say 100. I'm sure there's 100 bushel in there, and that's off 2 acres. So that's 50 bushels to the acre. 50 times 3 times 5. That's 1,500 pounds
Per acre?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's 30 pounds.
It's 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it is.
yeah, so 15. So that is a normal yield. That's still a good yield.
Yeah.
Because what we're talking about here is a crop, and I know this is one of the reasons you were interested in growing it, that has extremely high market value.
Right.
So einkorn.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't expect any great yield as far as agronomically.
But you're doing very well. And again, that 2,800 pounds per acre, that's under research experiment station conditions, which in some cases means that it's been very well managed.
Right. Well, what we call it, that's hand harvest.
Right.
Right.
Those are small
hand
plots.
harvest.
Yeah.
As a farmer, you can pretty much almost completely ignore.
Yeah.
You know, combine harvests are what is the reality.
So another rule of thumb: Henry's highest harvest over the last 5 years has been about 2,000 pounds per acre.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's his highest?
Yeah.
Well, then,
yeah. So you're doing very well.
And you're not. I have suffered the same thing. I haven't harvested this year just yet. I'm going to do it today, tomorrow, but I'm not breaking off awns successfily.
And breaking
good luck. Here, you want some awns?
No.
I was talking with Tom about that before, Scott. That it's really, if you can in the combine, you want to snap off as many of those awns as you can, because it makes moving the grain around if they're still on very difficult.
Yes, it takes up a lot more space. It's a lot more lofty. It doesn't flow.
Try to run through an auger.
And by the way, this is Scott Morgan. And
hi, everybody.
We're very lucky because Scott also is growing small grains and einkorn in particular. And can you just tell them now we're seeing Tom Zeng's John Deere self-propelled combine up close and personal. Can you tell us again what kind of combine you use and how much it cost you?
So we all four of us can stand underneath the back end of this. Mine is a third this size. It's an Alice Chalmers Gleaner E. I think it was manufacturer year 1962 or 63. Small 6-cylinder or 4-cylinder gas engine. Very rudimentary controls. My fan speed's an adjustable set of pulleys.
Yeah, that's all this is too.
Yeah.
How much did it cost you?
I actually got that for free. I drug it out of a hedgerow. Just because I could get the engine running and the transmission worked. I figured I could get the other belts and pulleys to go because everything's exposed on the outside of an old machine like that. And every year I have some trials and tribulations getting it going, and I did again this year. But
same with all of them.
Yeah, you only use the darn thing
I don't
a
think
couple hours a year.
New or used.
It's right. I don't think I've ever talked to a farmer that hasn't had breakdowns before, during, and after with the combine.
You can put new bearings in and everything, and do everything that you can imagine to do, and it's not enough.
Can you tell me again? Do you mind, Scott? Don't answer if you don't want to. But what is your price range for einkorn kernels?
So I am able to sell einkorn at market for $7 a pound, either as flour or whole berries.
Do you find the consumers are interested in einkorn?
I have a lot of discussion. This year there's been a big resurgence in home baking from just like a wider audience, so there has been a lot of interest this year. It helps that I ran out of my modern wheat. So, it just kind of drives that conversation a little further, a little faster in terms of what is einkorn, how is it good, how is it best used. And once you tell people that you can to treat it like pastry flour because it's got a lower protein, a lower gluten content, then people start to get the idea, I can make scones, crepes,
You can't
pie crusts, things like that.
You can in fact make bread, but it takes a little. You have to.
Right, you've got to be more patient. You've got to do the little slower
fragile,
folding, gluten building methods.
So what do you were saying that in this last marketing venture after the pandemic hit, that they were interested because you had some of it. But another thing that folks are interested in einkorn, and you can see it, it's nice marketing, is that golden color, the high lutein content.
Yeah.
Are they interested in this? So it's extremely nutritious.
Yeah, when you put the whole wheat flour from my hard red winter wheat bagged right next in a clear plastic bag right next to the einkorn, that einkorn just has this beautiful yellow color tone to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even in the flour, so not just on the grain husk itself or on the bran.
It's the flour.
The whole flour itself. Yeah, it's
yeah.
really beautiful. It's got some really nice flavor.
There it is. And you got to have a level full, but here, that makes for about a level full. See these grains sticking out here? It's because they have the awns attached. That's what we've been talking about, the awns. It's still 30.
Do you want to explain what you're doing? Because I have no idea.
This is weight per bushel. Bushel is a volume measure, but it's also a weight measure. So we sell by the weight, but it's also volume.
Right, because everything has a different pounds pounds per bushel.
Bushel pounds, like with corn, say bushel of corn weighs 56 pounds, bushel of barley is 48, bushel of oats is 32. But when you go to sell it, you go over a scale.
Right.
So I often have 58 cents a 60-pound corn. Almost never gets 60-pound soybeans, which is what they're supposed to be.
Yeah, so test weight is a measure of crop quality too.
Yes, it is.
Just talking about your oats. So,
Yeah, oats is 32 officially. When I only once got 32-pound oats, and they were the poorest crop I've ever produced.
So a high test weight is generally speaking one good indication of high crop quality.
And that also, you can get rid of it too, because some years if there's plenty of oats around, they're going to say, and what's your test weight? And if you start saying it's 34 or something, they might use it later in the winter if they need it.
But they want the bigger, plumper.
But if you say you have 38, 39 pound around here, sold.
Right.
All the same, Scott.
That's what I'm looking at. I mean, it's all the same, just a little bit different scale.
Now, the newer ones, they usually use hydraulic motors to power. You don't see as many belts.
Right, okay.
And all the bells and whistles inside, it's just a dumbing down. Anybody can sit in the combine and run it.
But if you don't
when
know
everything's working. But if something's not working, you don't know what to do.
Right.
Yeah, I do, and you will, because of what you're running. You'll say, well, that's out, so what? We can keep going.
Right. It tells you how fast the fan might be blowing, but that doesn't mean anything to you if you don't know what it means.
Although
if you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah, although I gather that even I remember a fellow came and did some combining for me one summer, and he had a newer machine, and he could call the dealer, and the dealer could set things on the computer and send it to the combine. So it's convenient.
Yeah.
But it's also convenient because the operator didn't have to determine it.
Right.
Is that a plus or a minus? Good question. Who knows?
As long as everything's coming in uniform, I guess it's okay. You can just have a computer driving straight lines and turn the machine around. But
and as long as you call when the dealership's open, you're in good shape.